Gantraja ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janma Yasya Yato Nivayad Itaratascha Teswa Vigyaswarat. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyantiyat Suraya.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyantiyat Suraya.
Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Misha.
Tejo Varimrida Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargo Misha.
Damna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
Damna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
For the creation, sustenance, destruction of the manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into
illusion. As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they're unreal.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in a transcendental abode.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma
truth.
Projita Kaitravocha.
Dharma Projita Kaitavutra.
Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam.
Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam.
Vedyam Vastavamatra Vastu.
Vedyam Vastavamatra Vastu.
Shivadam Tapa Trayon Mulanam.
Shivadam Taputra Yamulanam.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Kim Vaparir Ishwaraha.
Kim Vaparir Ishwaraha.
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra.
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate Tra.
Kriti Bihi Sususubhistakshanat.
Kriti Bihi
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Sukamukad amrita dravya samyutam.
Sukamukad amrita dravya samyutam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Muhur aho rasika bhuvibhavukaha.
Muhur aho rasika bhuvibhavukaha.
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
The mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit of the desired tree of Vedic literature.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all.
Including liberated souls.
Including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Hridyantaksto hi bhadrani.
Hridyantaksto hi bhadrani.
Vidunoti srihit.
Vidunoti surit satam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures.
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic literature.
Or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita.
or to hear from it directly from Bhagavad Gita.
is a self-righteous activity.
It's a self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
if one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling within everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best-wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies his body who constantly engage in hearing of him.
Nastaprayesu abhadresu
Nasta prayesha bhadreshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
nityam bhagavata sevaya
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
bhakti bhavati nasti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
kamalobhadayaschaye
cheta itaranavitam
cheta itaranavidam
stitvam sattve prasidati.
stitam sarve prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasanna manasu
Evam prasanna manasu
bhagavad bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata
bhagavad tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam
mukta sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangha Sajayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped away,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
chidyante sarva samsaya,
Siddhyante Sarva Samshaya
siyante jasya karmani,
Yante Sachakarmani
jista evatmanishwari.
Usta Ivan Manishwari.
Thus, bhakti yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the harness of material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables them to come at once to the stage of Samshayam Samam,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, verse number 46. Dharmapalo Narapati
Dharmapalo Narapati
Satu Samrad Brihach Travaha
Satu Samrudat Brihachara
Sakshan Maha Bhagavato
Sakyan Mahabhagavato
Rajar Sir Hayamedayat
Rajar Shirhayame Dayat
Shutrit Shama Yutodino
Cute Street Shrama Yutodino
Naivas Maj Chapamarhati.
Nazvash Machapan Arati.
Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Emperor Parikshit is a pious king. He is highly celebrated and is a first-class devotee of the personality of Godhead. He is a saint among royalty, and he has performed many horse sacrifices. When such a king is tired and fatigued, being stricken with hunger and thirst, he does not at all deserve to be cursed. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. After explaining the general codes relating to the royal position and asserting that the king can do no wrong and therefore is never to be condemned, the sage Samika wanted to say something about Emperor Parikshit specifically. The specific qualification of Maharaj Parikshit is summarized herein. The king, even calculated as a king only, was most celebrated as a ruler who administered the religious principles of the royal order. In the Shastras, the duties of all castes and orders of society are prescribed. All the qualities of a Kshatriya mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita 1843 were present in the person of the emperor. He was also a great devotee of the Lord and a self-realized soul. Cursing such a king when he was tired and fatigued with hunger and thirst was not at all proper. Samika Rishi thus admitted from all sides that Maharaj Parikshit was cursed most unjustly. Although all the Brahmanas were aloof from the incident, still, for the childish action of a Brahmana boy, the whole world situation was changed. Thus, Rishi Samika, a Brahmana, took responsibility for all deterioration of the good orders of the world. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prabhupada has said that fire in one tree can burn down an entire forest. And similarly, one bad disciple can ruin the entire movement of Krishna consciousness. It's pretty serious, right? One bad disciple is enough to ruin the entire movement. So here we see that one childish, immature Brahmana child was able to taint the entire Brahminical establishment in Kali Yuga. And Samika Rishi, realizing this, takes full responsibility. That's called, in legal term, the agency principle. What is the agency principle? Whether a leader knows or doesn't know, if his subordinates commit sinful activities, he's also responsible to some degree. Because as a leader, whether it's a mundane leader as a king or as a spiritual leader, if he's not able to correct his disciples and they commit sinful activities, he's also responsible. There might be degrees of responsibility or complete responsibility, but still that responsibility is there. And that's called the agency principle in legal terms. And even in spiritual terms, the guru will have to suffer for the sinful reactions of the disciples. What's a good example? A good example is Jesus Christ. He's still suffering today. The whole symbolism of Christianity is Jesus being crucified on the cross. And even though, by the way, how did he get up on that cross? He was nailed there by Roman soldiers, but the accusations against him were made by Jewish priests. So, in one sense, you could say it's the Roman king of, or the ruler of Jerusalem, or at that time. Or you could say also it's a combination of the Jewish priests and the Roman king that crucified Jesus Christ. However, what's interesting is Jesus' father, Krishna, predicted to Jesus that he would be crucified. And he indicated that to Jesus. And Jesus at first hesitated a little bit, but then he said, it's not what I want, but it's what you want that I shall do. So there was pre-existing knowledge of what was going to happen. Right? So some things are destined to happen, just like Kali Yuga is destined to happen in the order of material creation. And therefore, what is the duty of the Vaishnava? The Vaishnava's duty is to accept the prophecy of the Lord. Pritiviteya cheyata nagaradi gramas Sarvatma Prachura, Hai Bimuranama. In this age of Kali, the holy name of Krishna, especially the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, will be heard in every town and village of the world. And all living entities, not only human beings, but even the animals, the plants, the aquatics, the birds, the insects, the reptiles, they'll all hear this holy name chanted. So this is a prophecy by the Lord himself. So therefore, we should understand that in this age, this is the most essential activity that we should be doing. And this is very clearly explained also in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's actually incredible what Srila Prabhupada writes. No one can be compared to Srila Prabhupada in modern times when it comes to correctly and simply explaining some of the most esoteric principles. Of course, he learned everything from his guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada. And he learned from his guru, Gaurkishore Babaji, and his father, Bhaktivinoda Thakura, and of course, the 6 Goswamis, and Lord Chaitanya, and Madhavendra Puri, and then the Vaishnava Acharyas, including Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, and going back to Vyasadeva, Sukadeva Goswami, and Vyasadeva, and Narada Muni, and Lord Brahma, and ultimately Lord Krishna himself. So we see that this knowledge is coming down from Krishna himself through the entire disciplic succession and to Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada writes, he says, the transcendental loving devotional service is the spiritual activity of the spirit soul. Mayavadi philosophers confuse such spiritual activity with material activity, but the Bhagavad Gita 14:26 confirms this. Mam chayo vibicharini bhakti yogena sevate sagunam samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in the spiritual activities of unalloyed devotional service, abhya bicharini bhakti, is immediately elevated to the transcendental platform. Okay, notice the word immediately. He doesn't say gradually, he says immediately. So one who engages in spiritual activities of unalloyed devotional service. Okay, well, unalloyed devotional service, it may take time to come to that point. But if one is just a simple, straightforward, honest person, it can happen very quickly. Is immediately elevated to the transcendental platform, and he is to be considered Brahma Bhuta, which indicates that he is no longer in the material world, but is in the spiritual world. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, Nasochati Nakangsati. In other words, Brahma Bhuta means a person who comes to the level of Brahman. But Brahman is falsely interpreted by the Mayavadis to mean only the spiritual effulgence of the Lord, but it means much more than that. It means the entire material creation, it means the Jiva Atma, it means the Brahman effulgence, it means Paramatma, and it means Krishna, the fountainhead and origin of everything. That's the real understanding of Brahman. Okay, so he comes to the level of Brahman. What is the symptom of it? Prasanatma. He's completely satisfied by virtue of devotional service. He doesn't need anything else. He doesn't need cars, tractors, airplanes. He doesn't need positions or titles. He doesn't need anything except devotional service. So therefore he's prasanatma. He's not disturbed by anything. He doesn't consider himself a proprietor. He doesn't consider himself independent. He is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. He doesn't consider himself an owner of anything, because everything belongs to the Lord. So he is prasanatma, completely peaceful and self-satisfied, happy, by virtue of complete immersion in Krishna conscious activity. So, therefore, Brahmabhuta, which indicates that he is no longer in the material world, but is in the spiritual world. So the spiritual world is not something geographical, because everything is spiritual, because everything is coming from Krishna. There's higher spiritual energy and lower spiritual energy, but it's all spiritual. But the Mayavadis, they create duality. They think that the material world is different than the spiritual world in the sense that it's an illusion. It doesn't actually exist. And so they separate everything and put it like a wedge, where you can't go past this wedge. For them, there's no Vaikuntha, there's no Goloka, there's no Narayana, there's no Krishna. Those are all illusory representations. There's only this impersonal Brahmajyoti. So devotional service is enlightenment or awakening, when the living entity perfectly performs spiritual activities under the direction of the spiritual master. He becomes perfect in knowledge and understands that he is not God, but a servant of God, as explained by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jivera Swarupahaya Nityera Krishna Das. The real identity of the living entity is that he is an eternal servant of the Supreme. And this is Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 2108. As long as one does not come to this conclusion, he must be in ignorance. This is also confirmed by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita 7:19. Bahunam janmanam ante yanavam mam prapadyante vasudeva samahati samahatma sudrunabha. After many births of struggling for existence and cultivating knowledge, when one comes to the point of real knowledge, he surrenders unto me, Krishna says. Such an advanced Mahatma or great soul is very rarely to be seen. Thus, although the Mayavadi philosophers appear to be very much advanced in knowledge, they are not yet perfect. To come to the point of perfection, they must voluntarily surrender to Krishna. Then Lord Chaitanya quotes a verse, Vishnu Shakti Paraprukta Chitra Gyakya Tata Para Avidya Karma Samgyanya Tritiya Shakti Isyate. It's a very important verse from the Vishnu Purana, and it says, the potency of Lord Vishnu is summarized in three categories, namely the spiritual potency, the living entities, and ignorance, or Maya. The spiritual potency is full of knowledge. The living entities, although belonging to the spiritual potency, are subject to bewilderment, and the third energy, which is full of ignorance, is always visible in fruitive activities. In other words, working hard for economic development in order to have, as we said yesterday, sustained sense gratification. Okay, now this explanation Prabhupada is going to make right now is absolutely brilliant, incredibly precise and to the point, that if we simply understand this, we can make tremendous spiritual advancement. He says in the purport, this is a quotation from the Vishnu Purana 6.7.61. In the previous verse quoted from the Bhagavad Gita, it has been established that the living entities are to be categorized among the Lord's potencies. So what verse is he referring to? Vahanam jamanam ante gyanavam prapadyante vasudeva sarvamiti. So the devotee comes to that conclusion, Krishna, you are everything for me. Samahatma sadurlabha is very, very special. And Mamchayo vibicharina bhakti yogena sevate saganam samatidyaita brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in devotional service unfailingly and does not fall down under any circumstance comes at once to the stage of Brahman and is considered liberated. And then, of course, Jivera Swarupahaya Nitira Krishna Das, the real Swarupa or position of living entity, or the real identity of the living entity, is the eternal servant of Krishna. So Prabhupada says in the previous verse quoted from the Bhagavad Gita, it has been established that the living entities are to be categorized among the Lord's potencies. So that means there's the spiritual potency, the marginal potency, who are living entities, and the material potency, or Maya, or ignorance. And these are all coming from the Lord, and they're all spiritual. The Lord is potent, and there are varieties of potencies. Parasya Shakti Vividaiva Sriyate. He's quoting another verse from, I think, the Vishnu Purana. Now, in this quotation from the Vishnu Purana, this is further confirmed. There are varieties of potencies, and they have been divided into three categories, namely spiritual, marginal, and external. The spiritual potencies manifested in the spiritual world, Krishna's form, qualities, activities, and entourage are all spiritual. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 4.6, Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanami swarupi sam prakritim swamadistaya sambhavami atma mayaya. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, by my spiritual potency I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So that means when Krishna appears in this world, he's not appearing with a material body. He's appearing in his original transcendental body as Shamsundar, the threefold bending form of the Lord, Tribhanga, holding the flute with the peacock feather, etc. He's never influenced by the material nature, although he can enter into it and engage in all kinds of pastimes. The spiritual potency is manifested in the spiritual world. Krishna's form, qualities, activities, and entourage are all spiritual. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.6. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, by my spiritual potency, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Atma Maya refers to the spiritual potency. When Krishna comes to this or any other universe, he does so with his spiritual potency. We, on the other hand, take birth by the force of the material potency. But as stated here, with reference to the Vishnu Purana, this Chitragya, or living entity, belongs to the spiritual potency. Thus, when we free ourselves from the clutches of the material potency, we can also enter the spiritual world. That's the purpose of human life. The purpose of human life is not working hard and making a lot of money and spending the money for sense gratification. That is not the purpose of life. People think that's the purpose of life, and that's actually called ignorance. That means they're fully under the influence of Maya when they believe such a thing and act in that, with that understanding of life. So Prabhupada says, the material potency is the energy of darkness or complete ignorance of spiritual activities. So you understand, this Maya potency, it's darkness or ignorance. And what is it actually? Complete ignorance of spiritual activities. That's a description of the materialists, of almost 99% of the world's population. They have complete ignorance of spiritual activities. In the material potency, the living entity engages himself in fruitive activities, thinking that he can be happy through expansion in terms of material energy. The fact is prominently manifest in this age of Kali because human society, not understanding the spiritual nature, is busily expanding in material activities. The men of the, it's just like, okay, they got rid of Trump. Now comes Biden. And what's Biden's thing. His thing is that he's going to give out more free money, and he wants to insist that everywhere wear the mask, even though people that wear the mask still get COVID. So he's going to insist on people doing, and then he wants everyone to get a vaccine, and he wants everyone to become socialized, just like in Virginia now. Virginia just passed a rule. It's legal now that gender neutrality cannot be questioned anymore in Virginia. In all the schools, the bathroom is optional. Boys can go in, girls can go in, and any children who are transgender, you cannot call them he or she. You have to use neutral pronouns or neutral representation of them. You can't say he or she anymore. And it goes down the line. You know, so many things are going to change now legally in the United States. Although before it might have been only in this state or that state. By the time the 4 years are over, it's going to be every state has to follow these type of rules, and it's only the beginning, right? Not that one is better than the other. They're all the same. They're all forgetting Krishna, and they're all thinking about economic development, and they're all promising better sense gratification in a socialist world, or better sense gratification in a capitalist world, right? But it's all sense gratification. It's nothing else. So then he says, the fact is prominently manifest in the age of Kali because human society, not understanding the spiritual nature, is busily expanding in material activities. The men of the present day are almost unaware of their spiritual identity. They think that they are products of the elements of the material world and that everything will end with the annihilation of the body. This is the great religion of the atheists. And the main philosophy of their atheism is when you die, there's nothing. So you're not responsible for whatever you do. Right? Of course, it's better to be a good person than a bad person, but from now on, the difference between the two has become blurred. Just like in Seattle, you can commit crimes up to $1,000, you will not be prosecuted. Right? And you can burn down buildings as long as you're an activist, you're not responsible. You can even kill people as long as they're not socialists. So here we have the line between legal and not legal is getting blurred. Right? And it's not just one side or the other side. It's all sides, all politics, all nonsense now. They think that they are products of the elements of the material world and that everything will end with the annihilation of the body. Therefore, they conclude that as long as one has a material body consisting of material senses, one should enjoy the senses as much as possible. Since they are atheists, they do not care whether there is a next life. Such activities are described in this verse as avidya karma samgyanya. What does that mean? Avidya karma samgyanya. That means that although we belong to the spiritual potency, we are subject to bewilderment and the third energy, or maya, which is full of ignorance. And this is always visible in fruitive activities. Let's start this business. Let's buy at this price and sell at that price. And all that type of calculation. Let's build up a new company called Amazon by starting to sell used books. And now let's add on this product and that product and then another product. Let's take over let's put all the mom and pop stores out of business and everyone just buy from us. See, it started like this and now it's grown into this gigantic thing, right? And the whole purpose is to take over every business in the world, to sell every product that's being produced. and put out the business all these other mom and pop stores and even big stores, box stores. And everyone just goes online and buys from Amazon. You see? This is called false ego. This is called the material conception of life. This is called not caring for the next life. And this is called avidya karma samgyanya. That is, acting on this material level simply for material gain. The material energy is separated from the spiritual energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, although it is originally created by the Supreme Lord, he is not actually present within it. The Lord also confirms in the Bhagavad Gita 9.4, Matstani Sarvabhutani. Everything is resting on me. This indicates that everything is resting on his own energy. For example, the planets are resting within outer space, which is the separated energy of the Lord. The Lord explains in the Bhagavad Gita 7.4, Bhumir apo nalo vayu mano buddharevacha hankara idyame bina pakritirastata. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my, meaning Krishna's, separated material energies. The separated energy acts as if it were independent. But here it is said that although such energies are certainly factual, they are not independent, but merely separated. Now Prabhupada is going to explain what this actually means in simple language. And when he said previously, he says that Krishna is not actually present within the material energy. It means that he's not subject to it. Of course, he's present everywhere as Paramatma. He's present everywhere as the Brahman effulgence. Everything is situated on his energy, and everything is contained within the Virat Rupa, his universal form. Right? But yet, it says that he is not actually present within it. Why? Because he's present in Goloka Vrindavan, taking out the cows every day with the cowherd boys, and engaged in all kinds of transcendental pastimes with his devotees. So in other words, he is present and not present, because his personal form is not in any way touching the material nature. It's only engaged in these transcendental activities, and it's very significant that he's a cowherd boy. That means there's something wonderful about being a cowherd boy. And his closest friends are cowherd boys also, and cowherd girls. And where he lives is called Goloka, the place where there are cows. Ah, that should ring a bell. You should go like, ding dong, whoa, there's something really important about cows, right? And protecting them and loving them. So we should think about that. The separated energy can be understood from a practical example. Now, this is something you should think about all day today. This practical example Prabhupada is going to give now. This explains what it means by separated energy. I compose books for by speaking into a dictaphone. Prabhupada's speaking about himself now, right? I compose books. So Prabhupada has written so many books. We're reading one of them now, Chaitanya Charitamrita and Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and so many other books, by speaking into a dictaphone. And when the dictaphone is replayed, it appears that I am speaking personally, but actually I am not. I spoke personally, but then the dictaphone tape, which is separate from me, actually acts exactly like me. Similarly, the material energy originally emanates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but it acts separately, although the energy is supplied by the Lord. This is also explained in Bhagavad Gita 9:10. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam hetananena konteya jagat viparivartate. This material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. And Prabhupada writes, under the guidance or superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the material energy works as if independent, although it is not actually independent. That's what he means by separated energy. Separated in time, separated from his body, but yet non-different than him. And Prabhupada is somewhere else now, engaging in transcendental pastimes, but yet we're listening to his tapes of lectures that he gave in 1970, and 1968, and 1966, and up to 1977. So we're still hearing Prabhupada exactly the way he spoke, right? With all the potency of his words and what he's explaining. But yet he's somewhere else and enjoying transcendental pastimes with the Lord and devotees, or preaching. So this is what he means by separated energy. But yet, the separated energy is not independent of Krishna, even though we use the word separated. Krishna is controlling it. So this is called Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, simultaneously and inconceivably one and different. Everything in the spiritual world and everything in the material world is Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, simultaneously and inconceivably one and different. This is very difficult for most people to understand, but not difficult for devotees who understand that nothing is independent of Krishna. Everything is dependent on the mercy of the Lord, including ourselves. In this verse from the Vishnu Purana, the total energy of the Supreme Personality of God is classified in three divisions, namely the spiritual or internal potency of the Lord, the marginal potency, or the Kshetragya, the living entity, and the material potency, which is separated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and appears to act independently. When Srila Vyasadeva, by meditation and self-realization, saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he also saw the separated energy of the Lord standing behind him. Apasyat Purusham Purnam Mayam Chatad Apasrayam. Vyasadeva also realized that it is the separated energy of the Lord, the material energy, that covers the knowledge of the living entities. Yaya Samohito Jiva Atmanam Trigunatmakam. The separated material energy bewilders the living entities, or jivas, and thus they work very hard under its influence, not knowing that they are not fulfilling their mission of life. That's the point. Everybody is working so hard. Everyone's trying to make a profit. Everyone is trying to spend the money on different gadgets so that they can have more sense gratification. And they're not, because of all that hard work, they think they're doing the right thing, but actually it's the wrong thing. And they're not fulfilling the mission of life. They're wasting this precious human life on nonsense activities. Talking nonsense, eating nonsense, thinking nonsense, planning nonsense, all nonsense that has no permanency to it. It's all temporary stuff, and in the end, they end up with nothing except bad karma and starting all over again doing nonsense in the next life. And who knows what kind of body. You see? They're not fulfilling their mission of life. What is the mission of life? To go back to Godhead, where we belong, where we came from originally. That's where we should go back to. Just like many of you have come from India. And if I would ask you privately, what do you think you'll do in the future? You say, well, I hope to move back to India. How many are going to do that? Not that many. Some, but not that many. Right? But wait a minute. We all came originally from Krishna, from the spiritual world. And that's where we should desire to go back to. Right? But no, we're happy here. Just like I had a friend of mine. He was a wealthy person. And one day we were talking about subjects like this. He said, no. I want to live If I'm going to be reborn, I want to be reborn again in Medina. He was living in Medina. Medina is where all the rich people are, where Bill Gates lives and so many other rich people. I said, I don't want to go back to Vaikuntha. I want to continue to live in Medina. He didn't even say, I want to go back to India. You see, it's all nonsense, right? I tried to talk to him, but, he would understand a little bit, but then, bottom line, I want to go back to Medina. I don't want to go to Vaikuntha. But yet he knew everything. He knew everything about Bhagavad Gita. He would even preach it to his kids sometimes, right? But bottom line, I want to take birth after birth in Medina. So, when Srila Vyasadeva, by meditation and self-realization, saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he also saw the separated energy of the Lord standing behind him. Apasyat Purusham Purnam Mayam Shatad Apasrayam. Vyasadeva also realized that it is this separated energy of the Lord, the material energy, that covers the knowledge of the living entities. Yaya Samohito Jiva Atmanam Trigunatmakam. The separated material energy bewilders the living entities, jivas, and thus they work very hard under its influence, not knowing that they are not fulfilling their mission of life. Unfortunately, most of them think that they are the body and should therefore enjoy the material senses irresponsibly, since when death comes, everything will be finished. This atheistic philosophy also flourished in India, where it was sometimes propagated by Charvaka Muni, who said, see, this is nothing new. Even in ancient times, people had the same understanding, that when you die, it's all over. You're not responsible for what you did. There's no afterlife. There's no God who will confront you. Or there's no Yamaraj. It's all fairy tales. So I was living one time, way before I was introduced to Krishna consciousness, with a priest. And I was going to church with him almost 3-4 times a week. And I would help him clean the altar in the church. And then I was an altar boy, so I would be there every Sunday as an assistant of the priest, as an altar boy. And he was teaching me the Bible and everything. And we became very close because we were living together in the same room, right? And at one point he told me, he said, my dear boy, he said, I have to tell you what is the real truth. I said, okay, that's why I'm close to you. I want to know. He said, the real truth is, if you don't enjoy this world, how will you enjoy the next world? I'm not kidding you. Now, when he said that to me, I got a little confused. I didn't know exactly what he meant. But later on, he demonstrated to me what he meant. Later on, he fell down, gave up. He was an archbishop. So he was not just a lowly priest. He was a celebrate and an archbishop, right? He fell down, got married, started a company making knitted products, like hats and scarves and things like that, and going around selling at the stores, and had a factory, had workers, and this was his understanding. If you don't enjoy this world, you'll not be able to enjoy the next world. All nonsense. All complete nonsense. That's after reading the Bible. That's after teaching it to others. Right? That's after becoming an archbishop in the church. That's a high position. After archbishop, you become like the Pope. This is a danger of material life. How dangerous Maya is. So, Prabhupada says the atheistic philosophy also flourished in India, where it was sometimes propagated by Charvaka Muni, who said, Rinam kritva gritam pibet, yavad jivet sukham jivet, basibhutasya dehasya kuta punar agamo bhavet. This is written by Chanakya Muni, right, who is the personal advisor of Chandra Gupta, the king who defeated Iskandar, or Alexander the Great, who invaded India. He defeated him because he was being advised by Chanakya Pandit. Chanakya Pandit was not only a Brahmana, not only a moralist who wrote the Chanakya Niti Shastra, but he was also an advisor, a military advisor, and he told the king how to defeat Alexander. You go to Delhi today, there's a whole neighborhood of rich politicians and businessmen called Chanakya Puri. Right? It's one of the most prominent places to live in Delhi, right? So Chanakya Pandit is not any little guy; he's a big guy. And all kids previously in India were especially northern India, they learned Chanakya Niti Shastra. Prabhupada also in Bengal, he was trained in Chanakya Niti Shastra. Therefore, he repeats many of Chanakya Pandit's aphorisms and proverbs, right? So there's Chanakya in northern India, and there's Tirukural, the book written by Tiruvela Kulu or something like that. Huh? What's his name? Tiru what? Balavar. Yeah, Tiruvalluvar, or they just call him Valluvar. They don't even use the word Tiru, but Tiru means saintly, spiritual. Yeah, so the Tirukural is the same thing, but the Tamil version. He didn't copy Chanakya Pandit, but it's a Tamil version of Chanakya Niti Shastra, and all kids were educated with this. They're basically proverbs and wisdom. Now, Prabhupada said Chanakya Pandit was not a Vaishnava. He was a Brahmana and a moralist, right? There's a difference between the two. But yet, his Niti Shastra correctly explains mundane spiritual life. If you want to know the truth about mundane spiritual life, you can read Chanakya Niti Shastra. That means that he's telling the truth. He's basically saying it's all Maya. It's all nonsense, right? But there's a way of dealing with the nonsense, and he explains that in pearls of wisdom, right? And Tirukural's book is the same thing, but the Tamil version in the Tamil language, and this Tiruveruval was a very unique person. He explained his proverbs in I think it was just like 7 words. Each proverb is only 7 words. Very short, pithy, full of, like Vedanta Sutra, short sutras that are very, very profound. Okay, so Chanakya Pandit's Charvaka Muni was a materialist in ancient times. His theory was that as long as one lives, one should eat as much ghee as possible. So now we know why the cow is important, because you get milk, and you get yogurt, and you get paneer, and you get ghee, right? And Charvaka Muni is saying, as long as you live, you should eat as much ghee as possible. In India, ghee, clarified butter, is a basic ingredient in preparing many varieties of food. Since everyone wants to enjoy nice food, Charvaka Muni advised that one eat as much ghee as possible. One may say, I have no money. How shall I purchase ghee? Charvaka Muni, however, says, if you have no money, then beg, borrow, or steal, but in some way secure ghee and enjoy life. For one who further objects that he will be held accountable for such unauthorized activities as begging, borrowing, and stealing, Charvaka Muni replies, you will not be held responsible. As soon as your body is burned to ashes after death, everything is finished. This is in ancient times. Therefore, it's not new, right? What they're saying today, or the nonsense they're saying today, is the same nonsense that was said thousands of years ago by Charvaka Muni. However, there's a difference. This is called ignorance. From the Bhagavad Gita, it is understood that one does not die with the annihilation of his body. Nahanyate hanyamane sarire, right? Bhagavad Gita, 2nd chapter, 20th verse. Therefore, the annihilation of one body involves changing to another. Tata dehantara prapti. So then it's quoting 2 verses now. 2nd chapter, 13th verse. Dehinosmin yata dehe komaran yovanam jara tata dehantara praptir. That's the line, the 3rd line. Diras tatra namuyate. Therefore, to perform irresponsible activities in the material world is very dangerous. Without knowledge of the spirit soul and its transmigration, people are lured by the material energy to engage in many such activities, meaning sense gratification, as if one could become happy simply by dint of material knowledge, without reference to spiritual existence. Well, this is what's happened today. No one is teaching spiritual knowledge in the schools. They're all teaching only material knowledge. And therefore, people don't believe in spiritual existence after death. They don't believe it. They think death is it. It's the end. That's what our kids are learning. That's what is being taught in the schools. Therefore, the entire material world and its activities are referred to as avidya karma samgyanya, all full of ignorance. And people are bewildered by this 3rd energy, which is full of ignorance. And it's visible in fruitive activities. Let's make money by doing this. Let's make money by doing that. Those are fruitive activities. In order to dissipate the ignorance of the human beings who work under the material energy, which is separated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord comes down to revive their original nature of spiritual activities. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanhir bhavati bharata. As soon as they deviate from their original nature, the Lord comes to teach them. Sarvadharmam prityaja, mami comes saranam braja. My dear living entities, give up all material activities and simply surrender unto me for protection. Bhagavad Gita 1866. Now you see what Prabhupada has done here. In a few paragraphs, he explains the whole Krishna consciousness and gives all these corresponding verses to support everything he said. Now, you can read Bhagavad Gita 100 times, you will not be able to do what he just did. I can guarantee you. You see? That's why he's Acharya. He's Mahabhagavat devotee. He's putting this all together in a few paragraphs that even if we read Bhagavad Gita 100 times, we would not be able to do it. Okay. But we can do it if we follow Prabhupada and carefully understand what he's done and appreciate it. So, in the statement of Charvaka Muni that one should beg, borrow, or steal money to purchase ghee and enjoy life, ritam kritva gritam pibet. Thus, even the greatest atheist of India recommends that one eat ghee, not meat. My God, even he could not imagine that people would be stupid enough to eat meat. You see? But yet, many children of Vaishnavas, Sri Vaishnavas, this Vaishnava, that Vaishnava, sometimes they're forced to buy meat for their kids. Do you know anyone like that? You know anyone like that? No? You know anyone like that?
Yeah, many Brahmanas.
Huh?
We do have some friends who grew up as Brahmanas, in their original by birth, but then now some of them eat, and in fact they actually enjoy the meat more. So,
Sad. Really
yeah.
sad. But do you know any Brahmanas who still act like Brahmanas, but they let their kids eat meat, and maybe even buy it for their kids?
I personally
Don't
know.
Anybody? I know someone.
Hmm.
They don't eat meat, but they sometimes even cook it. for their kids or for the husband, although they're Vaishnavas. Okay, so anyway, it's a very sad situation. So Prabhupada says, it is the statement of Charvaka Muni that one should beg, borrow, or steal money to purchase ghee and enjoy life. Thus, even the greatest atheist of India recommends that one eat ghee, not meat. No one could conceive of human beings eating meat like tigers and dogs, but men have become so degraded that they are just like animals and can no longer claim to have a human civilization. So I'm going to stop right there. It's getting late. But this is serious, very serious subject. And Prabhupada has nailed it in a few paragraphs. Right? This continues. I'll continue this tomorrow. It's very profound. It's all in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Right. Are there any questions? Adi Leela, chapter 7. I read verses... Well, I started at the end of 118 and read the entire verse, 7, 119. Entire verse and purport 7, 119. Any other questions, comments?
This is probably just to... Prabhupada gives the... you stated Prabhupada describes how when he stated into the dictaphone and then now we're playing
separated
his message.
Energy.
Separated energy. So there, one could potentially say that, okay, now Prabhupada is not in control of that. It's a separated energy. That part is explained. But how do we demonstrate or articulate that the Lord, even though this is a separated energy, that it is still under his control?
Well, you have to read the 13th chapter and 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It explains that he is... there are two chitragya, the individual soul, the jiva, and Paramatma, who's Krishna. So he's the knower in everybody. Everybody, 2 words. Not everybody, 1 word. So he's present in everybody. And Adantarasta Paramanu Chayantyasta, he's present in every atom of the universe as Paramatma. And the whole universe is contained in his Virat Rupa body, and he permeates the entire universe as Brahmajyoti. Everything is situated on him. So he's omnipresent. He's all present everywhere throughout the material nature. But yet he's enjoying independently all pastimes. And even in the material world he's independent when he comes here. But the Mayavadis, see now next Prabhupada is going to explain the Mayavadis' misconceptions and how Sankaracharya tricked people to becoming basically atheists. That's next, tomorrow and the next 2 or 3 days. See, and then, now we're going to understand how he did it and how he separates Krishna. So it already says that the material energy is a separated energy, but yet, if you carefully understand, he's also present everywhere in the material energy, and nothing is independent. Right.
So the energy is separate, but he is still permeated into...
Yeah, and Prabhupada's recorded classes and conversations and so forth are non-different than Prabhupada, unless they go and personal, what do you call that, scramble it in one way or other. But as long as they haven't done that and you're hearing what Prabhupada said, it's non-different than him. Right? So nowadays they have all this technical knowledge how to take something and change it, but it looks like it's the original thing. But as long as they haven't done that, you're hearing Prabhupada exactly the same way that he spoke in the 1960s, 1970s, word for word, with his voice that's non-different than him, right? And he did the same thing with Bhagavad Gita. He wrote it as it is. So it's the same Bhagavad Gita that Arjuna heard 5,000 years ago. Therefore, when you read it sincerely with the help of bona fide gurus, you come to the same conclusion as Arjuna. I should surrender to Krishna. Right? So that's what parampara is. It doesn't change anything. It gives it as it is. Okay, so it says separated energy, but yet it's not independent of Krishna. And he's in complete control of it through his expansions. This is what the Mayavadis reject. They reject that. And that's what we're going to hear tomorrow and the next day.
Do you have time for one more question?
What is the difference between differentiated energy and separate energy? Is there any difference? Differentiate and
no,
separate.
Krishna has multiple energies.
Right.
Prasya Shakti Vivivaya Shriyate. Mayavadis reject that. They said, no, we don't reject it. We don't accept that. There's only one thing as Brahman. There's not internal energy, external energy, marginal energy. They reject that.
No, I'm not talking about them. They're crazy. I'm just talking about they're crazy guys in a way. So I'm talking about sometimes we use the word differentiated parts, energy and separate energy. Is that the same thing or the different meanings?
Achintya Veda Abeda Tattva. It's simultaneously and inconceivably one and different.
No, I understand, but when you use the word...
You and I are one with Krishna because we are part and parcel of Krishna. But we're not Krishna because Krishna is a different person, we're a unique person. So there's a principle, okay, I'll explain it now. There's a principle in Sanskrit that says, it's called vikara or parinama, which means transformation. Like, for example, you have milk, right? Then you heat it up, it boils, you add some lemon juice. All of a sudden it breaks down into whey and cheese, right? And also you can make yogurt. So let's say you're only making yogurt. So you make yogurt. The yogurt is not different than milk, but yet it has an independent existence now. That's why in the store they sell milk and they sell yogurt. Like you're a father, so you get married and you and your wife have a child. That child is coming from your mother's body, from the mother's body, and with the help of the father who gives the seed, but it's a different person. So now you have, from one truth, you have two truths. From one reality, you have two realities. So therefore, transformation of a second independent truth from a first truth. This is a Vedic aphorism. It's called Satatvato Nyata Buddhir Vikara Iti Udadrita. This mantra indicates that from one fact, another fact is generated. For example, a father is one fact, and a son generated from the father is a second fact. Thus, both of them are truths, although one is generated from the other. So that explains Krishna and his energies. He is a supreme, absolute truth. But from him, other things emanate that are truth also, that are, it's called his energies. But the Mayavadis reject that totally. They say, no such thing.
No, Maharaj, I'm talking in terms of, in literally way. You have two words, differentiated and separated. So how do you put those words? Because you use in the philosophy, you mentioned about separate energy of Krishna and differentiated parts and parcel of Krishna.
Basically means the same thing, because differentiated part and parcel or separated, nothing is actually separated. right? Because Krishna permeates everything. But yet, there's from one independent truth, a second independent truth is produced. Just like milk and yogurt, right? So because the original thing is truth, whatever comes from it is also truth. And whether anything deviates from it is untruth, but still is dependent on the truth. Just like you can have darkness, but it's a function of light. It's not that light is a function of darkness. So, therefore, we go back to this point. This mantra indicates that from one fact, another fact is generated. So it might be considered a differentiated part and parcel, or it might be considered a separated. But both things mean...
Okay, I mean, are they synonyms, basically? The synonyms?
In the sense of that Krishna is the origin of everything, and everything that emanates from him is his energy and is under his control. Once you say that, then yes. But you can look up in the dictionary and it might say no. Yeah.
I think there's a way to, on the internet, there's a difference between separation, differentiation is, if I can just read that.
Yeah. So that's why I just said what I just said, right?
Yeah. I think what you said is accurate. The separation is when something divides itself into separate pieces. And then differentiation is when you are explaining from outside the differences between two entities. So it's both.
So that's not
separated.
that's not achintya beta beta tattva. That's
I mean, they use the word differentiate when you are, let's say, in this case, the material energy is both separated from the Lord, because the Lord himself expanded into all these energies. And then when we are explaining, saying, okay, what is the difference between material energy and spiritual energy, that's when the word differentiation of what
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But we come back to achintya beta beta tattva. It is and it isn't. Whereas in the material sense, there's a difference. In the spiritual sense, there's a difference, but they're not independent.
Correct.
See? Whereas here, if you can differentiate between two different things, and one is independent of the other. In this case, in the spiritual sense, they're never independent. They're always dependent. That's why people have trouble understanding spiritual reality, because they're bringing in their material conception. All glories to Prabhupada.